A millionaire stormed into his mansion, and what he saw left him frozen. His maid had his baby strapped to her back, like it was her own child. Furious, he was ready to fire her on the spot. But what the maid revealed next changed everything. Watch this story till the very end. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Train threaded down the glass like sheets of grey silk when Michael Harrison stepped into the doorway of his Bel Air kitchen and froze. Jazz hummed from a phone speaker. A pot of soup whispered on a low flame. And there, backlit by the afternoon gloom, his 6-month-old daughter was strapped against a white uniformed maid's back in a bright woven wrap. "What are you doing with my daughter?" Michael's voice sliced the room. "And what is that thing on your back?" Jasmine Walker didn't flinch. She slid the wooden spoon into a spoon rest, then turned slowly so Sophie faced him, tucked high and snug between shoulder blades and hip. Sophie's cheeks were flushed, eyes bright, lips bubbling out the softest syllables, little sounds Michael hadn't heard in weeks. "It's a wrap carrier," Jasmine said, even, professional. "She settles here. And you will take her out of it now." Michael shrugged off his rain-dark coat, water ticking onto the marble like a metronome. "I didn't authorize experiments on my kid." Jasmine's hand hovered near the knot. She didn't untie it. "Sir, before I move her, look at her face." She's calm. She's tracking you. Her shoulders aren't rigid, her breathing is even. For Sophie, that matters. Sophie spotted him and made a delighted sound, both arms windmilling, the tiniest breathy bah that clamped around Michael's heart. For a second, the storm inside him faltered. The baby hadn't babbled in days. Then the memory of the day slammed back. The $12 million deal that cratered. The board emails, the long, wet drive, the way control kept slipping from his hands. "I said out," he repeated. Jaw tight. From the archway, Dorothy Coleman, 60, precise as a metronome in her navy cardigan, appeared, worry knitting her brow. "Mr. Harrison?" "It's fine, Mrs. Coleman," Jasmine said softly without looking away from Michael. "Mr. Harrison, I'll move her gently, but I need you to hear one thing first." "You need?" Michael's laugh was short, empty. "You need a new job if you think—" "There's almond on the bottle warmer," Jasmine said. That landed like a misstitched note. "What?" "Not the nut," she added quickly. "The smell. Bitter almond. It's a classic red flag for certain compounds. Could also be a plasticizer off-gas from heated cheap materials, but it wasn't there this morning." She nodded toward the counter, where the sleek warmer sat like a chrome pebble. "I shut it off, bagged the last bottle and labeled it. I'm sending it to a lab I use at the hospital for a panel. Until we know, I'm not feeding Sophie anything that's touched that device." Mrs. Coleman's eyes flared. Michael's narrowed. "You think someone poisoned my daughter in my own house?" "I think something isn't right," Jasmine said. "And until I can rule out an irritant or contaminant, I'm going to act like a nurse, not a maid." "Act like—" Michael stopped. "You're a maid." "I'm a pediatric nurse who took a domestic position because it paid triple an entry-level RN," she replied, still calm. "And the rap isn't a stunt. It's deep pressure and vestibular input. It's why she's not screaming right now." Sophie hiccuped a tiny laugh as if on cue. Thunder rolled over the hills. The kitchen lights flickered. Michael pinched the bridge of his nose. "Enough, take her out. Hand her to me. Mrs. Coleman, prepare a bottle from a fresh can, new warmer if you have to." "We did swap warmers," Dorothy said, voice low. Per Miss Walker's instruction. "And sir," the rash on Sophie's neck faded when Miss Walker used the wrap. "It comes roaring back with the bottle." Michael looked between them, temper and terror tangling. He had been gone 90 minutes, maybe less. How had the center of his world turned into a crime scene? A soft chime pulsed from the far counter. His wall tablet lit with a security notification. "Service door opened." "We didn't open that," Dorothy whispered. Jasmine's eyes flicked to the hallway. "I locked it after the gardener left." Michael swiped the screen. A camera feed popped up. The mudroom door stood ajar, rain spattering inside. No one visible. Another chime. "Wing sensor offline." "Routers fluttering with the storm," Dorothy muttered, but she didn't sound convinced. Jasmine's hands finally moved. She untied, pivoted, and lifted Sophie from the wrap with practiced precision, cradling her high on the chest. "If I hand her to you cold, she'll panic," she said. "Step close and we'll transition. Your right hand under her ribs, firm, not hard. Your left hand cups her shoulder. Good, keep the pressure. Don't bounce. Bouncing overstimulates her. Michael obeyed before he realized he was obeying. Sophie's head turned toward his heartbeat. The old sharp grief flashed. Diana's laugh, the birthing suite, the silence that followed, and he swallowed it like glass. Now, Jasmine said, walk with me. We're going to the nursery where her sound machine is already set to brown noise, 44 decibels. Mrs. Coleman, can you grab the bagged bottle and the wrap? Don't touch the warmer. We are not going upstairs, Michael said, and then froze as a new sound slid down the hallway. A footstep that wasn't theirs. Slow, uncertain, in his own house. Dorothy's hand found the drawer with the heavy flashlight. Security? On its way, Michael said, tapping the pendant on his watch to dispatch the gate patrol, even as the storm chewed at cell signal. The wall tablet clock hopped from 4:33 to 4:35 and back. Jasmine pivoted, so Sophie's ear stayed on Michael's chest, her own body a shield. Mr. Harrison, look at her, she murmured. Her color. Her breath. Keep the pressure. We're okay. He hated that he needed the instruction. He hated that it worked. Another footstep. On the stair now. Who's in my house? Michael called, voice ringing up the marble. No answer. Then the softest scrape, like fabric against rail. Jasmine angled her chin toward the opposite hall. Back pantry. No sightlines from the stairs. Go. Michael moved. Sophie latched to him like a tiny starfish. In the narrow pantry lined with labeled jars, Jasmine eased the door until only a sliver remained. Dorothy stood beside them, flashlight off, a phone in her other hand, thumb hovering. The house exhaled. Somewhere a vent kicked on. Somewhere. Something dripped. Michael's anger tried to rise again. How dare you commandeer my home, my child? But beneath it pulsed another feeling he didn't recognize on himself. He was taking instruction. And the instruction was right, sir, Dorothy whispered. Listen. A faint rattle, metal on glass. The nursery camera, Michael recognized it, third-floor hallway, made that sound when someone adjusted it. Jasmine met Michael's eyes in the dark. Calm, focused. Your interior cams, who has access? She mouthed. Me, he mouthed back. And Clara, my assistant. And he stopped. One more person. The one he'd never questioned. Richard Townsend, his head of R&D, who insisted on bundling the Harrison smart home integration during a remodel last year, a perk from a partner vendor. Why was he thinking of Richard? Because an hour ago Richard texted, "We need to talk, urgent, about your nanny." The pantry seemed to tilt. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'm going to flank the stair." Jasmine shook her head once. "You're holding the baby. You don't flank anything." Dorothy pressed something into Jasmine's palm, a small black fob. "The panic latch for the safe room," she breathed. "Under the nursery rug." Jasmine tucked it into her pocket. "We aren't making it to third floor with Sophie screaming." Sophie miraculously wasn't screaming. She was tucked into her father's sternum, eyes half-lidded, damp lashes spiking and relaxing, a thumb working her lower lip. The sight landed like a meteor in Michael's chest. From upstairs, a new sound, a door, not the nursery closing. Then retreating steps, fading. The service notification chimed again. Service door, closed. They waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2, Michael tapped his watch. Bars returned. Call came through, he murmured after a beat, scanning the screen. Gate guard saw a figure in a poncho head down the embankment by the eucalyptus. Couldn't identify. Dorothy let out a breath she'd been holding for a decade. Jasmine didn't. Someone had a key, she said. No forced entry. Door opened and closed, interior camera moved. And Sophie didn't explode when the footsteps were near because she tilted her head, calculating. Because the steps were slow, measured, not pounding. Not a stranger to the floor vibrations. Whoever it was has walked that hall a lot. Michael stared at her. What exactly are you doing here, Miss Walker? She met his stare. Trying to keep your daughter calm while we figure out why someone with access is making changes to her environment and why her bottle warmer smells wrong. Don't recite a script to me. Fine, she said. Voice level. Here's the part you're not going to like. Your late wife emailed a file to a hospital social worker 2 weeks before Sophie was born. In that file, she expressed concern about 2 things: Sophie's sensory responses on prenatal scans and the pressure Richard Townsend was putting on her to opt in to a newborn trial tied to your company's new formula technology. I saw the file this morning. It was forwarded to me by that social worker, because my name is on a consent Diana signed if anything happened during delivery, naming me as a contact for infant developmental follow-up. Michael blinked. Diana would have told me. She tried, Dorothy said quietly in the dark. You were in Zurich closing Meridian. She left me a note to remind you to read the email then. The complications. Dorothy's voice broke and reformed. We never got to it. Jasmine eased one hand on Sophie's back, the other gesturing to the carrier slung over her shoulder. This wrap? It isn't mine. It was in a sealed box in the nursery closet with a card that said, For the long afternoons when the world is too loud. I opened it on Tuesday when Sophie's rash flared. It helped. Today I found something stitched into the hem. A micro SD card. Dorothy's head snapped toward her. You didn't say that. I haven't had a second alone, Jasmine said. I haven't watched it yet. But the label on the bag it was in said S-monitors, backup. Michael's pulse climbed a ladder rung by rung. You're telling me my wife hid camera backups in a baby carrier? I'm telling you, Jasmine said, that Diana was smarter than all of us when it came to protecting Sophie. Outside, a siren doppled, then cut. The gate intercom crackled with a guard's voice. Mr. Harrison, LAPD is en route per your panic ping. Do you want them to proceed? Michael looked down at the tiny weight against his chest, at the swirl of damp baby hair that still smelled like talc and rain, at a life he'd been failing to read. He looked up at the two women holding his house together with courage and thread. Proceed, he said. Then to Jasmine, You're not fired. I didn't ask to keep my job, she replied. You didn't have to, he said, and surprised himself with the softness in it. You just saved my daughter from something. And you may have just saved this entire family from a bigger lie. Jasmine's gaze flicked to the stairs one last time. Then there's one more thing you need to know before the police arrive. What? The bottle I bagged? She nodded toward the counter. It wasn't from a cheap warmer. It was sitting in a limited edition Harrison Care prototype your R&D shipped here last week. Whatever caused that smell came from your own supply line. The house seemed to tilt again. A fresh chime bloomed on the wall tablet. Front gate. Visitor. The camera filled with blue and red splashes in the rain. Jasmine shifted Sophie's weight and glanced at Michael. Mr. Harrison, whoever walked your hall knows your cameras and your rhythms. They have a key. And unless that micro SD card tells a different story, my working theory is simple. Say it, he managed. The danger to Sophie didn't come from outside, she said. It started inside this house. Thunder answered for all three of them. Then the doorbell rang. The bell pealed once, then again, low and insistent under the storm. Michael shifted Sophie higher against his chest and crossed the marble, Jasmine and Dorothy flanking him like a small, improvised detail. When he opened the door, rain and blue-red light spilled over the threshold. Two LAPD uniforms stood beneath dripping hoods. Behind them, a black sedan idled with its wipers thrashing. Mr. Harrison? The taller officer asked. Call came through your panic watch and from the gate. I'm Officer Rios. This is Officer Hahn. Inside, Michael said. Service door was opened without authorization. Interior camera upstairs was moved. And someone left a message in my daughter's nursery. Rios's gaze slid to Sophie, then to Jasmine's wrap slung across her shoulder. He didn't waste breath on small talk. We'll clear the house first. Anyone else inside besides you three? No. Lights on, stay here, Hahn said quietly, and the officers moved like ink down the hall, voices low in their radios, clearing rooms in methodical sequence. Michael's security guard hustled in from the rain, breath fogging, palm resting on a holster he wasn't supposed to need in this zip code. The storm hammered the roof. Somewhere in the hills a transformer snapped, and the lights hiccuped, then steadied. Jasmine touched Michael's sleeve. Keep the pressure exactly where it is, she murmured, fingertips indicating the place under Sophie's ribs. Her breathing stays even if your hand stays firm. He held, surprised to feel the tiny movement of her diaphragm sync with his palm. It steadied him more than he wanted to admit. Officer Rios returned first, rain spattering his shoulders. Ground and second floor are clean. We found the nursery message on 3. Looks like oil-based paint or marker. No one currently inside. Any exterior cams? Michael gestured to the wall tablet. Hold property. The storm's messing with the uplink. We'll pull what we can, Hans said, peeling off gloves. We'll also need to secure any physical evidence. You mentioned a bottle? Jasmine nodded and lifted the sealed bag from the counter with 2 fingers. Half full. I sealed it and recorded the time, 4:18 p.m. No one's handled it since. Her voice went professional in a way that made the officers' eyes register her differently. Chain of custody starts now, Rios said, uncapping a Sharpie, his handwriting neat against the slick plastic. We'll run talks. You'll get a case number within the hour. I'd like a hospital panel run in parallel, Jasmine said. Pediatric-compatible GCMS for volatile compounds. Cedars-Sinai can turn it faster for infant safety. Dr. Robert Anderson will receive it. Han weighed that for a beat, then nodded. We can escort it to Cedars as soon as we finish the initial sweep. Any reason to believe the child is in immediate medical distress? No, Jasmine said before Michael could answer. Her vitals are steady, rash reduced with decreased exposure. But we're not feeding her from any device until we know more. Rios scribbled, then glanced at Dorothy. Ma'am, your phone's been buzzing, may I? Dorothy handed it over, the block number text still glowing. You can't protect her forever. Rios took a photo with his department device, then snapped pictures of the wrap, the warmer, the scuffed threshold at the service door, the faint, muddy print on the tile, one droplet perfectly oval where a heel must have paused. Hans' radio crackled. 3rd floor is clear, message photographed. No additional damage. Message? Michael asked. Rios's eyes flicked to Jasmine, then to the hall. She knows, he said simply. Large block letters on the nursery wall, dripping. Michael's stomach tightened. He looked at Jasmine. She didn't flinch. Her gaze went distant for a second, running through possibilities like cards in a practiced hand. Who is she supposed to be? Rios asked, eyes scanning the 3 faces. Could be Dorothy, Michael heard himself say. Could be Jasmine, could be my late wife, except... He stopped. Except she's not here to know, Dorothy finished softly. Jasmine drew a breath. So there's a micro SD card Diana hid in the hem of that wrap, she said, nodding toward the colorful sling. I haven't viewed it yet. It's labeled S Monitors Backup. If there's anything on it, it might answer who she is. Rios raised a brow. You found hidden media and didn't watch it. I chose not to handle digital evidence until you arrived, Jasmine said. Chain of custody applies to bytes too. Officer Hans' mouth twitched, something like respect. Smart. Michael set Sophie into the crook of his arm long enough to unclip the hem seam with a small pair of kitchen shears Dorothy produced from the drawer. A thumbnail-sized card snug inside a strip of fusible interfacing dropped into his palm. The sight, Diana's foresight, compressed into a black chip, punched the breath from him. Rios produced a portable right blocker and a battered department, laptop from his pack, gear that looked like it had seen more dark basements than Bel Air kitchens. We can image it without altering metadata, he said, practical. They gathered around the island while the storm drummed its fingers on the skylight. The laptop's fan whirred. A plain directory tree loaded on the screen, folders with timestamps in Diana's tidy naming style. A folder labeled Juniper, and another with a single MP4, 4JW, MP4. Michael's jaw worked. JW, he echoed. Jasmine Walker. Dorothy looked at Jasmine. Jasmine stared at the file like it might bite. Play it, Michael said. Han tapped, the video expanding to fill the screen. Diana appeared. 6 months younger, 8 months pregnant, hair twisted at the nape, sitting in the nursery chair with the same wrap folded across her lap. The room in the video looked softer, quieter, before grief had sheared the edges off the house. If you're seeing this, Diana said, voice low and clear, it means I didn't get to tell you this in person. Jasmine, if this is you, thank you for agreeing to be the contact. I know it's a lot. Jasmine's hand rose to her mouth, then lowered, steadying. Michael, Diana continued, turning her face to a second camera, as if she knew he'd be there eventually. If you're watching too, I love you, and I know you're angry already. The shadow of a smile passed. Don't be. I didn't hide this from you. I tried to talk to you, but you were in Zurich, and then... Her eyes flicked down. She swallowed. I've been getting pressure from Richard to enroll our newborn in Harrison Care's Juniper trial. It's supposedly a passive biomarker study delivered through the feeding system. On paper, it's elegant. Smart dosing learning from infant responses. But I tested one of the prototype warmers with a lab friend, and we found trace volatile aldehydes off-gassing when it's pushed to high. The video jittered. The word temperatures came through a second later. I told Richard no, Diana said. He smiled and told me all the right things. Then a package arrived at the house with a note that said, "For Sophie on me." I didn't open it. I bought this wrap instead and learned how to wear it in prenatal class. If something happens to me and Sophie struggles, Jasmine knows what to do. There's a second folder on this card labeled Juniper. If you see anything strange around the baby's feeding devices or cameras, open it and give it to, well, anybody who still believes medicine is for patients first. She looked, for a second, directly through the screen at Jasmine, then back at Michael. If I'm being paranoid, you'll let me know I made you watch this for nothing and we'll laugh about it. If I'm not, keep Sophie close. Keep her in the wrap when the world is too loud. And Michael, look up from the numbers. She'll need your eyes. I love you. The screen went black. The storm filled the silence that followed. Michael's throat had gone tight around a knot he hadn't let himself feel in months. Dorothy blinked fast and angry. Jasmine wiped at one eye with the heel of her hand, then squared her shoulders. Officer Rios cleared his throat. We're going to make a copy of the card. With your permission, we'll take the original as evidence and leave you the clone. Take it, Michael said, voice rough. Take the bottle, take my whole server if you need to. We will need network logs, Han said gently, and any vendor access lists. Clara, Michael snapped into his phone, and his assistant's voice, crisp and anxious, clicked into his ear. Pull every shipping record to this address for the last 3 months. Also, I need a full access audit on the smart home. Who has admin privileges when codes were used, and who authorized the Juniper prototypes to be sent here? Already on it, Clara said. And Sir Legal just pinged me. Richard asked for your presence in a 6 p.m. R&D sync. He's forwarding documents about infant trial expansions. Cancel him, Michael said. And lock down R&D file access for any project tagged Juniper effective now. There was a small silence on the line. Understood. Rios glanced up the stairs. We'll have forensics up there in 10. In the meantime, Officer Han will take the bottle to Cedars with one of you, as requested. We'll split the custody forms. I'll go, Jasmine said. I'm driving you, Dorothy added, chin set. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Take my SUV. I'll follow with Sophie once the house is clear. Not necessary, Jasmine said, eyes flicking to Sophie's relaxed face. She's calm on you. Keep her that way. If she sees me leave and has to transition without the wrap, she'll escalate. Michael looked startled. She'll what? Purple cry, Jasmine said. Hard, inconsolable. Keep the pressure. Talk low, he obeyed again without argument. They moved like a small machine. Officers packaging the bottle, signing forms. Dorothy grabbing coats, keys, and umbrella. Jasmine pulling the wrap across her chest in one practiced swoop, knots whispering into place. As she slung her bag, she turned back to Michael. Open the Juniper folder when we're in the car. If anything in there is time-sensitive, call me on speaker. If I don't answer, call Dr. Anderson, tell him Juniper is hot. He'll know what that means. How? Michael asked. Jasmine met his eyes. Because Diana told him too. The revelation hung for a beat. Then the front door opened to rain and the night swallowed them. Michael stood in the kitchen with Sophie drowsing against him, while Officer Han imaged the micro SD. He opened the second folder. A list of files spilled down the screen. Timestamps, camera names, and chillingly labels that read things like Nursery over Siwafat MP4, Hall upstairs 02.mp4, service door 05.mp4, offline backups, from cameras that had officially never stored locally. He clicked the most recent. The upstairs hallway appeared, grainier than the police laptop's live feed. This storage had throttled quality to save space. Timecode 4:27 p.m. The frame shivered. The nursery door stood open a hair. Then a figure slid into view, rain poncho, hood up, head tilted down. The person moved like they knew the house. No pause at thresholds, no hesitation at the top of the stairs. They disappeared into the nursery. A second later, the camera view jolted, then re-leveled, offset by a few degrees. The figure backed out, raised a gloved hand to the wall and began scrawling with something that left a thick, wet stroke. She knows. The person stepped back to admire their work. In that slight turn, A cuff flashed in the hallway mirror. A silver cufflink shaped like a double helix, a gift line Harrison Pharmaceuticals had made one holiday, engraved for senior staff only. Michael knew the model. He had given one to each executive at the Christmas party. Including Richard. Pause, Michael said, and Han froze the frame. The reflection was small but crisp. The helix, the subtle enamel inlay in Harrison blue. Not unique, he told himself. Not legally sufficient. But his stomach didn't care what was legally sufficient. He scrubbed back 5 minutes. Another clip loaded. Service door 05. The same poncho slid in silently. A gloved hand tapping a keypad without looking. Muscle memory. The status light flicked green. Then the door eased shut behind them. No crowbar. No alarm. Who has that code? Han asked, eyes on the screen. My household contractors, Michael said slowly, and a vendor from the integration team. Richard insisted his people manage the smart home rollout last year. Townsend Integrated Systems. Townsend, Han repeated, voice absolutely neutral. You don't say. Michael's phone vibrated in his pocket. Clara, he answered. Talk. I pulled shipping, she said. 3 prototype warmers and 2 case lots of smart formula shipped here in the last 6 weeks, tagged Juniper. All authorized by an R. Townsend on the internal form. There's an attached note. Family pilot for executive validation. She paused. Sir, there's more. The smart home vendor's master code was used at 4:25 p.m. today. The code belongs to a subcontractor named Miguel Alvarez. I called the company. He was terminated last month. How terminated? Non-performance, allegedly. But the code never got deactivated. Michael looked up at Han. Han had already raised an eyebrow like a question mark. Send the logs to the officers on site, Michael said. And Clara, yes? Call legal. I want a hold on all R&D communications tagged Juniper and get Dr. Anderson on the line. Patch him to me when he's free. As he hung up, Sophie stirred, a small snuffling protest. Michael shifted to match Jasmine's earlier pressure points. The protest melted. The way it worked, a simple physical thing, felt almost like an accusation. How had he not known? Officer Rios appeared at the archway. Forensics is upstairs, he said. We'll dust the nursery and lift prints off the service keypad if the rain hasn't eaten them. My sergeant wants to know if you'd like a patrol to sit on the house overnight. Yes, Michael said. And assign one to follow the bottle to Cedars. I don't care if it's theatrical. Already in motion, Rios said, then pointed at the laptop. What's that? Michael unpaused the clip of the scroll. Rios watched, then looked at the reflection image of the helix cuff. That's suggestive, he said carefully, but not definitive. Half this town has helix jewelry thanks to your holiday swag. Michael's jaw tightened. I know. Let's keep the focus, Rios said. We've got a break-in with no obvious theft, a message meant to intimidate and possible contamination of an infant feeding system. That's 3 felonies worth of motives. We run them all. The front door opened again. Dorothy rushed in, hair jeweled with rain. We're at Cedars, she panted. They're processing. Jasmine stayed with the sample and is calling Dr. Anderson. I came back because of this. She held up a thin folder, soaked around the edges. Found it slid under the windshield wiper when we parked. No envelope. Rios took it with a gloved hand, opening it over a towel on the island. Inside, printed emails with Harrison letterhead, screenshots of dashboards with Juniper in the corner, and a list of infant IDs with masked names. The top page had a post-it in block letters. Who's the baby now? Dorothy swayed a little. Michael reached out and steadied her with the forearm not holding Sophie. The gesture felt more intimate than it should have. She just nodded a thank you, eyes tight. Rios and Han exchanged looks that said this night had just escalated again. Michael's phone buzzed. Dr. Anderson? Finally. Han tapped speaker. Michael, it's Robert, came the warm, slightly breathless voice. I'm with Jasmine in the talks lab. Early red, emphasis on early, shows elevated volatile aldehydes consistent with overheated polymer components, not cyanide. That bitter almond scent can show up with thermal degradation of certain adhesives. Still, not something you want near an infant airway. Jasmine's voice came faintly in the background. We also found trace quaternary ammonium compounds. Likely residue from a disinfectant cycle. The device ran automatically. If the device overdosed the cycle, it could irritate Sophie's skin and mucosa. Michael closed his eyes for a second. Richard authorized those units to this house. Of course he did, Anderson said quietly. Listen, Jasmine asked me to say a phrase if this was happening. Juniper is hot. I'm calling it. I'm also paging a contact at the FDA's device division tonight. Rios made a small approving noise. Loop us in on any regulator who knocks, he said. We'll coordinate. Already on it, Anderson said. Jasmine wants to speak with you, Michael. The line rustled. Then Jasmine's voice, cool and clear, filled the kitchen. She's okay? She asked before anything else. Michael looked down at the damp lashes, the heavy-lidded serenity. She's calm, he said, and the word felt new in his mouth. Good, keep her that way, Jasmine said. Listen carefully. I reviewed one more clip on the card with Dr. Anderson before handing it to evidence. Time-stamped the morning Diana went into labor. She recorded herself again. There's a code phrase you need to know. Michael braced. What is it? Juniper White, Jasmine said. She says if anyone uses that phrase in your presence, they're signaling they're on her side. And there's a second phrase, Summer Black. That's the signal someone is compromised. I think she set it up because she knew she was boxing with sharks. Michael let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Of course she did, he said, the ache in his chest old and raw. Of course she did. Rios tapped the folder Dorothy had brought. We're getting a warrant for your R&D cloud, he said. In the meantime, Mr. Harrison, no solo confrontations. If you plan to meet your colleague, Richard, anywhere, you let us know. Michael's eyes drifted to the helix reflection on the paused screen. He asked for a sync at 6. Don't go, Jasmine said in his ear. He's not going to talk. He's going to make you choose his way in public. The kitchen clock clicked over to 5:12. The storm began to slacken, rain easing from fists to fingers. In the lull, Sophie exhaled a tiny theatrical sigh and relaxed completely into Michael's chest, palms splayed over his shirt as if pinning him in place. Okay, he said. I won't go. Dorothy blew out a breath she'd been holding since the service door alert. Then what do we do until the lab finishes? We secure the house, Rios said. We get your residential codes changed and your vendor access revoked, and we call a locksmith who isn't on your payroll. Do you sleep? Han asked Jasmine's disembodied voice with unexpected gentleness. Later, Jasmine said, after we stop the bleeding. By 9, the house felt different. Extra locks gleamed on doors that had never needed them. Temporary sensors blinked like watchful eyes in hallways. 2 patrol cars idled quietly at the curb, their presence as much deterrent as comfort. Upstairs, the nursery wall sat under a plastic sheet, the dripping letters preserved for powder and pictures. So forensics tech with purple hair and a deadpan voice had muttered, amateur, which made Michael bizarrely want to laugh. At 9:14, Clara texted, legal has frozen Juniper. Townsend is furious. He's demanding an executive session tomorrow AM. Also unconfirmed, the internal comms team says, Meridian's PR just teased a breakthrough in adaptive pediatric dosing. Michael felt the heat rise at his collar. So of course Richard would run to Meridian if he felt his position slipping. At 9:22, Dorothy brewed coffee in a French press like it was a sacrament and forced Michael to sit, eat something, breathe. He obeyed, because the baby didn't stir on his chest, and because every time Jasmine's voice returned to his ear with another instruction, he realized he wasn't the most important person in the room anymore. Sophie was. At 9:47, Officer Rios's sergeant called with an update. Security cams on the slope below the service door had picked up a figure sliding down the wet hillside, then ducking under the eucalyptus to a waiting car. No plates, no make, just a dark shape and taillights disappearing into rain. But the angle caught one detail when the poncho lifted, a forearm with an old jagged burn scar. Rios filed the detail. Michael filed the name who wore one. At 10:06, Dr. Anderson called back. Prelim talks complete, he said. This won't be official until the lab signs it, but we're looking at a combination of volatile aldehydes from heated adhesives, plus elevated residue from a disinfectant cycle. The device shouldn't have run on an infant setting. If your engineers built a remote override, someone used it. Remote override? Rios repeated, pen scribbling. That's a new felony. Michael's phone buzzed again, unknown number. He almost let it go, then answered. Juniper White, a woman's voice said without preamble. Dr. Patel, I'm on Anderson's list. I treated your wife twice and you're... A pause. Your daughter once, when the rash first appeared. I've been waiting for you to call me. Now I'm calling you. Don't let anyone take that child out of your arms until we meet. If you need a safe place tonight, I have a room in pediatrics that no one thinks to look at. Michael's hand tightened around the phone. We're home with police. Good, Dr. Patel said. Then stay put. In the morning, bring the baby to me quietly. The line clicked dead. Dorothy looked at him over the lip of her mug. Summer black? She asked. No, Michael said, and something like a smile tugged at one corner of his mouth for the first time since the service door ping. Juniper white. At 10:23, the microSD clone finished its imaging. Officer Hahn slid it into a fresh evidence bag and placed it in Michael's palm. This is your copy, she said. Don't put it in any computer connected to your home network. Consider your Wi-Fi compromised. Clara will bring a clean laptop in the morning, Michael said. Make it from a store, not the office, Hahn said dryly. And pay cash, Dorothy blinked. Cash? I haven't carried cash since the Dodgers were still good. Careful, Hahn said with a ghost smile. That's fighting talk in this town. Sophie made that small, satisfied grunt again. Michael looked down and felt something break and mend at the same time in his chest. He had believed for half a year he didn't know how to do this. He still didn't, but he knew how to keep someone against his heartbeat and not let them go. Maybe that was a start. His phone lit again. Clara, one more thing. HR file on Miguel Alvarez, the ex-contractor whose code was used. He did a 6-month stint 5 years ago for theft. He was hired to Townsend Integrated Systems by Richard's brother-in-law. Also, Miguel has a burn scar listed in a hospital intake after a warehouse accident. Left forearm. Michael stared at the screen until the letters blurred, the reflection of the Helix cufflink still frozen in the corner of the laptop as if watching him back. Tomorrow, he said to no one in particular and everyone at once. We go to Cedars. We take the baby to Patel. We hand the regulators the card and the logs, and I call a board meeting that is not on Richard's calendar. Dorothy put a hand on his shoulder. And tonight? Tonight, he said, I stay right here. Cedars Sinai at night feels like an airport at 3 a.m. Fluorescent twilight, echoing footsteps. The soft, omnipresent beep of machines counting time money can't buy back. Jasmine sat on a metal stool in the tox lab, hair damp from the sprint through rain, watching the chromatogram printouts rise itty-bitty mountain ranges onto paper. Dr. Anderson tapped a pen against his clipboard, reading left to right, humming under his breath. You okay? He asked without looking up. I will be when she's safe, Jasmine said. And when the person who walked those stairs is in cuffs. Anderson smiled without warmth. You know there's a chance the person who walked those stairs thinks he is the hero of his own story. Pioneer, visionary, pushing the world forward. I don't care what story he tells in the mirror, Jasmine said. He left paint on a baby's wall to scare a woman who died, bringing that baby into the world. And he tried to run a disinfectant cycle through an infant's airway. That's not pioneering. That's cruelty with a lab coat on. Anderson set the pen down. Remind me never to get on your wrong side. She finally smiled, a quick flash that softened the angles fatigue had carved into her. Too late, she said. You're already on my team. He tipped his head toward the sealed evidence bag on the counter. You didn't tell him you knew Diana before she died, he said. That you were her nurse in prenatal, and that she asked you explicitly to keep an eye on the baby if the worst happened. Jasmine's hands moved over the edges of the wrap in her lap, finding the old seam where the card had been hidden. He didn't need to hear it from me in the kitchen, she said. He needed to hear it from her on that screen. Anderson was quiet a moment. You understand he's going to ask you why you took a job as a maid in his house and didn't tell him who you were. I'll tell him the truth, Jasmine said. That the best pediatric nurse in the world still can't pay for her sister's chemotherapy without a miracle in America. That he never interviewed me, and I never wanted him to think I was using Diana's memory to get into his life, and that I would have told him when he was ready to listen. Anderson nodded, then tapped the Juniper folder on the clone drive the officer had left with them at the lab's request before sealing the original. You know what the other files show? He asked. Tell me. Device logs, he said. Remote entries. Someone pushed a cycle at 2:23 p.m. today from an admin IP associated with Harrison Pharma. HQ, someone used a master. Code to open the service door at 4:25. Someone, with a helix cuff, decided to play graffiti artist at 4:27. And sometime before 4:18, Jasmine said, someone forgot that babies aren't machines. Anderson slid the evidence bag toward a courier who'd appeared at the door, a hospital badge bouncing against her sweatshirt. Regulator pickup in the morning, he told Jasmine. You should sleep. Jasmine shook her head. I will, she lied. After I swing by a 24-hour store. For what? A new sound machine, she said, standing, the wrap folding into her hands like water. Brown noise. 44 decibels. Anderson's eyes crinkled. There, of course. She paused at the door, hand on the frame. Robert, she said. Diana's code phrases. Juniper white and summer black. You know what they are, right? Passwords for trust, he said. Jasmine nodded. And warnings you have to believe even when they hurt. She walked into the quiet, humming backbone of a hospital that had seen every kind of human failure and miracle. Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist that turned streetlights into halos. Somewhere across town, in a house that finally understood how dangerous silence could be, a billionaire who'd built an empire on formulas was learning, one breath at a time, how to hold his daughter. Back in the Bel Air kitchen, the cloned drive screensaver kicked on. For a moment, the room went dark except for the soft blinking of temporary sensors and the slow rise-fall of a sleeping baby's back against a father's shirt. Then the laptop woke itself and autoplayed the next video in the Juniper folder. Diana's face filled. The screen again, different this time. Filmed from the car as rain ticked the windshield. If you're watching this, she whispered, glancing at the rear view like someone might be behind her even then, it means he didn't stop. Michael, listen to me. If Richard says the word summer black to you, it's not a warning. It's a test. He told me he'd use it to see who I told. She swallowed. And if he ever asked to hold Sophie for just a minute, when you're angry or tired or not paying attention, don't let him. Keep her in the wrap. Keep her with Jasmine. If you don't, I'm afraid... The audio fuzzed. The picture jumped. Her last words were almost lost under the rain. He's already inside. The timer on the oven ticked once, empty and precise. Michael didn't move. He couldn't. He kept his hand exactly where Jasmine had taught him, firm under Sophie's ribs, and stared at the screen until the storm outside became only a sound he wasn't afraid of anymore. The morning broke grey over Los Angeles, the storm clouds sagging low like a ceiling that might collapse. Michael Harrison hadn't slept. He hadn't dared. All night he'd sat in the nursery chair with Sophie dozing against his chest, the wrap still draped across his lap like a tether to Diana's ghost. Every creak of the house had felt like a threat. Every blink of the temporary sensors had reminded him someone had once walked these halls with a key. By 7 a.m., the patrol outside had rotated. Dorothy brought coffee, silent but steady, while Officer Rios updated his notes. The clone drive sat sealed in a bag on the kitchen island. Next to Sophie's rattle and a half-eaten sandwich, Michael hadn't noticed abandoning. Mr. Harrison, Rios said carefully, forensics confirmed no forced entry. Whoever it was, they had the code and knew how to move inside without tripping motion sensors. We're escalating this to major crimes with a cyber angle. You'll be assigned a detective today. Michael nodded stiffly. He wasn't sure if the numbness in his body was from exhaustion or fury. Then Clara called. Her voice carried the sharpness of someone who hadn't slept either. Michael, I've got the board buzzing already. Richard's pushing a press release with Meridian. Something about adaptive dosing for neonatal care. It's scheduled for this afternoon unless you shut it down. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. Not yet. Let him think I'm off balance, sir. Clara hesitated. There's something else. An internal memo leaked to the press. Anonymous source. It says, the Harrison infant has been enrolled in an unapproved prototype trial. The words landed like a hammer. Michael's throat went dry. He looked down at Sophie, her perfect, peaceful face. Someone had turned his daughter into a headline before she could even crawl. Which outlet? He asked. The Los Angeles Herald. They're holding the story for confirmation, but if Richard pushes his release, they'll publish side by side. Dorothy, overhearing, covered her mouth in horror. Rios cursed under his breath. Michael straightened, the numbness replaced with cold fire. Then we move first. At 8:30, he bundled Sophie carefully, strapped her into the car seat and drove, convoyed by police, to Cedars Sinai. Jasmine met them at a back entrance, her scrubs freshly changed, her face shadowed from the night she hadn't slept. "She's stable," Jasmine said the moment Michael stepped inside. She touched Sophie's hand gently, like she'd known her all her life. "But we can't keep reacting. We need to go on offense." They were ushered into a quiet pediatric exam room. Dr. Patel was waiting, her eyes fierce behind rimless glasses. "You'll both want to hear this," she said, dropping a thick file on the counter. "I've seen versions of this before. Corporate trials disguised as pilot programs. Infants used as data points because they can't give consent. Diana knew. That's why she set up the code phrases." Michael swallowed hard. "So what now? Lawsuit? Press conference?" "No," Patel said. "That makes Sophie the center of a circus. You want protection? You need leverage. The Juniper files on that drive. Give them to the FDA investigator I trust, quietly. Let regulators walk into your boardroom before Richard has a chance to spin it." Jasmine folded her arms. "And if Richard realizes we moved first?" Patel's eyes hardened. "Then he'll make a mistake. Men like him always do." For a moment, the three adults stood in the small, sterile room, the hum of machines filling the silence. Sophie stirred, then sneezed, a tiny sound that broke the tension. Jasmine smiled, soft and tired. Michael looked at her and saw not a maid, not an employee, but the one person Diana had trusted above all others. And then Michael's phone buzzed again. A single text from an unknown number, "An AM rooftop, come alone. Bring the card." "Oh, Sophie's name hits every headline in the country." He stared at the words, pulse pounding. Someone wanted the evidence. Someone wanted to silence them before the regulators could see. This wasn't business anymore. It was blackmail, and Michael knew whether he went to that rooftop or not. His life, Sophie's life, and the truth Diana had died protecting were about to collide. The text burned on Michael's phone screen like a threat carved in glass. 11 a.m. rooftop, come alone. Bring the card, or Sophie's name hits every headline in the country. He sat frozen in the exam room at Cedars-Sinai, Sophie's faint breaths against his collarbone, the only reminder the world was still real. Dorothy pressed a hand to her lips. Jasmine's eyes flicked from the phone to Michael, calculating, measuring. Dr. Patel swore softly, a word she never used in front of patients. "You can't go," Dorothy whispered. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Michael muttered, staring at the message. His pulse thundered in his ears. "But if I don't go, they'll smear Sophie's name across every outlet in the country. They'll paint her as a corporate experiment before she learns to walk." Jasmine stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "Listen to me. If you walk onto that rooftop alone, you won't come back down. Whoever sent that message already broke into your home, tampered with your daughter's equipment, and scrawled threats on her nursery wall. Do you think they'll hesitate to put their hands on you?" Michael looked up at her, torn between fury and fear. "Then what do you suggest? Sit here and wait for them to destroy my family's name?" "No," Jasmine said firmly. "We turn their trap against them." By 10:30, the plan was set. LA2ED's Major Crimes Division had agreed to stage surveillance, but quietly. The message's demand was specific, alone. If Michael appeared flanked by police, whoever was behind this would vanish into the storm drains of Los Angeles, taking the leverage with them. Michael wore a wire hidden beneath the pressed lines of his shirt. The cloned drive, empty of Juniper data, sat inside a slim leather case, a decoy. The real drive had already been secured in Dr. Patel's locked cabinet, tagged for an FDA handoff later that day. "Keep to the script," Officer Rios instructed, his eyes hard. "You stall, you push for confirmation. We'll be watching from 3 angles. Don't try to play the hero. Just keep him talking." Michael nodded, though his heart raced like a trapped animal. He glanced down at Sophie one last time, bundled in Dorothy's arms. She gurgled, oblivious, and the sight nearly undid him. He bent and pressed his lips to her forehead. "For you," he thought. "Every risk I take for you." The rooftop was high above a midtown parking structure, slick with rain. The city spread in a grey sprawl beneath a washed-out sky. Michael stepped into the open leather case in hand, his shoes splashing through shallow puddles. At first, the rooftop seemed empty. Then a figure emerged from behind the HVAC's unit, a man in a dark coat, hood up, hands hidden in his pockets. His walk was slow, deliberate, as though he owned the very concrete beneath his feet. "Mr. Harrison," the man said, voice calm, familiar. He lowered the hood. Silver hair glinted wet in the muted light. A helix cufflink caught on his sleeve. Richard Townsend, Michael's jaw locked. "You." Richard's smile was practiced, boardroom smooth. "Who else? You didn't think this was about money, did you? It's about legacy. Juniper is the future. Adaptive dosing will put Harrison Care on every map, in every hospital, in every crib. And your daughter? Our daughter of innovation was supposed to be the proof." Michael's grip tightened on the leather case. "You broke into my house. You tampered with her food. You painted threats on her nursery wall." Richard shrugged. "Dramatics. You don't win wars with honesty, Michael. You win them with spectacle. A little fear, a little pressure, and you would have fallen in line." Michael's anger spiked, but he forced his voice level. "You sent me here for this." He held up the case. "The card." Richard's eyes gleamed. "Yes, hand it over, and I'll make this all disappear. No headlines. No regulators sniffing around. Sophie grows up untouched. You and I go back to running Harrison Care like kings." Michael stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "And if I refuse?" Richard's smile thinned. "Then tomorrow morning, every paper in this country runs with the headline that Harrison's golden child was poisoned by her own father's empire, that her name is already stained with scandal, and the board. They'll strip you bare and crown me." For a moment rain hammered louder, a drumbeat over the city. Michael stared at Richard, the man he'd once trusted, the man Diana had feared. He thought of Sophie's tiny hand resting on his chest, of Diana's whisper from the video, "Keep her in the wrap. Don't let him hold her. He's already inside." Michael inhaled, steady. "You talk about legacy, Richard, but all I see is a coward hiding behind a baby's crib." Richard's eyes narrowed. He extended a hand, palm open. "The card, Michael, now." Michael looked down at the case, then back up, holding Richard's gaze. His voice was cold steel when he answered, "You'll never touch my daughter again." Across the street, Officer Rios whispered into his mic, "Stand by." He just gave us probable cause. And on the rooftop, the showdown teetered on the edge of violence. Rain sheeted across the rooftop, needling Michael's cheeks as Richard's hand stayed outstretched, palm open, eyes flat. "You'll never touch my daughter again," Michael said. Something in Richard's expression changed, an old mask cracking. He lowered his hand and gave a small contemptuous nod past Michael's shoulder. A door at the far end of the roof clanged. A man in a poncho stepped out, hood up, rain sliding off the plastic like mercury. He walked with the unhurried assurance of someone who'd cased this place and every place like it. When the hood slipped back a fraction, Michael saw it, a jagged burn scar laddering the left forearm. "Miguel. Last chance," Richard said. "Put the case on the ground and kick it to me." Michael set the leather folio on the wet concrete, wind whipping his coat against his knees. He didn't move it. He looked from Richard to Miguel and back again, then said very evenly, "Juniper white." Richard blinked. Only a heartbeat. But there it was. The flicker, the almost smile of a man who thinks he's the only one who understands the rules of a game he invented. "Cute antique," he said. "Diana always liked her little codes." He tilted his head. "What did she tell you about Summer Black?" "That it's your test for traitors," Michael said. "And that anyone who uses it on me is already compromised." Miguel's eyes slid to Richard. Something like annoyance, no fear, ticked his jaw. The wind gusted. Far below, a siren ghosted and was gone. "You shouldn't have brought him," Michael said. Miguel smiled without warmth. He held up a grey brick the size of a paperback, an LED pulsing on its face. "You shouldn't have brought that," he said. The LED went steady. In Michael's earpiece, the wire Rios had set, the line went to mush, a swarm of bees gnawing through signal. Jamming, Richard's smile widened. "Alone means alone," he said. "So now the case." Michael kicked it once, lazy, so it slid only a foot. "You know the funny thing about you, Richard," he said. "You talk about legacy, but your vision has never once included the faces you're asking to carry it. Not Sophie's, not any child's, just the graph line." Richard's patience thinned. "Enough." Miguel moved first, stepping in to scoop the case. He crouched, hand extended, and Michael towed the folio again, just harder this time, sending it skittering past Miguel's fingers. It slid, hit a shallow puddle, and went over the low concrete curb that rimmed the roof. Miguel lunged, cursed, and threw himself onto his belly, arm fishing uselessly in space. As the empty case tumbled end over end into the rain-dark alley, Richard's face blanked. Michael met his eyes. "Decoy," he said softly. The real drive went to the hospital lab at dawn and to an FDA investigator at 9. Every device log, every remote override, every pilot you tried to bury. It was the first time Michael had seen real anger break through Richard's boardroom varnish. It wasn't hot. It was glacial. "You think regulators frighten me?" he asked. "I feed them, Michael. I brief them. They give me awards. Not for this," Michael said. "Not for scaring a widow in her own nursery. Not for running disinfectant cycles through a baby's airway." Miguel had rolled to his knees, rain flattening his hair. "We're done," he said to Richard low. "Call it." Richard didn't answer. He took 2 slow steps toward Michael, spreading his hands like a man approaching a skittish animal. "You're tired," he said. "Grief makes anyone stupid. You don't actually want to light your company on fire." "My company burns either way," Michael said. "The question is whether we're a light people can stand to look at." He moved then, the smallest movement, one hand lifting, 2 fingers tapping the rain-slicked face of his watch exactly 3 times. A prearranged signal to a camera 3 rooftops over. Across the street, Officer Rios murmured to his team, "Go." What happened next wasn't cinematic. It was precise. 2 silhouettes rose like ghosts from behind the HVAC stack, dark jackets soaking through instantly. Weapons low but ready. A 3rd officer emerged from the stairwell door behind Miguel, voice thunder flat. "Police, hands!" Miguel spun, too fast, too trained, and took 1 step toward the stairwell door. Officer Han put a hard command into the air. "Don't." Richard froze, eyes slicing through rain as calculation fell apart. "Hands," Han repeated. To his credit, or his lack of imagination, Richard obeyed first, palms up, cufflink flashing Harrison blue. Miguel hesitated a half-second too long, gaze flicking to the ledge where the empty case had disappeared, then to the jammer in his fist. He looked at Michael, and in that small wedge of time, Michael saw the truth. Miguel wasn't loyal to Richard or Harrison Care. He was loyal to the story of himself that Richard had sold him, outsider turned indispensable, the man in the ductwork who saves the day. That story ended here. Miguel lifted the jammer as if it might become a weapon. Han closed the space in 3 strides, drove him forward onto wet concrete with a force that knocked water into spray, and had his wrists cuffed before the jammer stopped buzzing. Rios was already on Richard, the metal click of cuffs tidier, almost polite. "You're making a mistake," Richard said to Rios without looking at him. "You have no idea what you've stepped into." "We step into messes for a living," Rios said. "Turn around." Michael exhaled for what felt like the first time since the service door chimed. The rush of relief was short. Richard craned his head, eyes finding Michael. "You think this ends with me?" he asked, calm again now that theater had returned. "Even if I go, Meridian goes forward without me. You kneecapped Nexapril with your little tantrum. Your board will cut you and sell your name for scrap." Michael felt the words hit dead center. He thought of Clara's texts, the rumors of Meridian's press tease, the investors who would bolt at the first whiff of weakness. He thought of the long table in the boardroom, the portraits of previous CEOs gazing down like judges. He thought of Diana's hand on his chest in an older life, and Jasmine's hand guiding his fingers to exactly the right place under his daughter's ribs. He smiled, small, real, unperformed. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd rather lose the job than the point." Rios hustled Richard toward the stairwell. Richard's voice floated back, still smooth, still selling. "Don't worry, Michael. Even if you win, your daughter will grow up reading your name in lawsuits." "No," Michael said. "She'll grow up reading her mother's name on a clinic." Richard's laugh drifted and died in the stairwell. Han unclipped the wire under Michael's shirt, her fingers quick and professional. "Your heart rate spiked to an impressive number, Mr. Harrison," she said. "You okay?" "No," he said honestly, "but I will be." He lifted his eyes into rain, let it wash the heat off his skin, and imagined the tiny weight that waited for him 2 miles away. He closed his hand once, like a promise, and followed the officers down. The rest of the day fractured into rooms. A small conference room at Cedars, where Dr. Patel sat shoulder to shoulder with an FDA investigator who had the patient patience of a man used to pushing boulders uphill. The Juniper card on the table, evidence bags stacked like glass coasters, a printed chain of custody sheet. Dorothy signed in careful cursive. Dr. Anderson unrolled a diagram of the prototype warmer and with a pen circled everything that could become a weapon if the wrong person typed the wrong command from a cushy office. A cramped interview room at LAPD where Miguel tried on 3 stories in succession. Loyal soldier, innocent subcontractor, blackmailed victim, before the detail about the burn scar and the ex-employee code and the staged message in a nursery tightened around him like a net. When Rios slid a photo across the table, a still frame of a helix cuff reflected in a hallway mirror, Miguel looked at it a very long time and then said quietly, "He said it was for the data." A glass box at Harrison Care headquarters, where the board gathered with faces the color of legal paper. Clara sat at the back, 2 phones and a laptop arrayed like a shield. Janet Foster presided, jaw clenched. On the screen, a draft release. On a second screen, an email from the FDA requesting immediate cooperation. On a third, a blinking cursor in a message to employees who'd learn within the hour that the name Townsend was no longer attached to their email directories. Michael walked in without a tie, rain darkening the shoulders of a suit he hadn't changed since the night before. He didn't sit. He told them the truth in a voice that didn't ask permission. "Here is the situation. Our head of R&D pressured my wife to enroll our infant in a device trial. When she refused, he sent prototypes to my home anyway. He had a former subcontractor with a deactivated code open my service door and adjust my nursery camera. He wrote a threat on my baby's wall. Today he attempted to extort evidence from me on a roof. He let the words rest in the exact middle of the table. If you're looking for a spin, I don't have one. A man on the left, finance, opened his hands like scales. Share price will fall, Michael said. For a while. Then it will rise if we deserve it. What about Nexapril? Someone else asked. The Meridian Teas? We will defend our IP, Michael said. We will also defend a human life. We can do both, and if we cannot, we will choose the life. Silence, humming and thick, settled. Michael looked at Janet. Her eyes were exhausted and very awake. What do you need from us? She asked. 3 things, Michael said. 1. Immediate suspension of all Juniper-adjacent projects until the FDA concludes its review. 2. Full cooperation with law enforcement and regulators. No whisper campaigns, no private back channels. 3. Approval to stand up a pediatric safety and ethics unit that reports directly to this board, not to me. You're taking it out of your own hands. Someone said, surprised. I've had my hands on too much, Michael said. They will report to you, and to the families we serve. And Richard? A voice from the far end asked, thin with disbelief. You had him arrested. No, Michael said. He arrested himself. Janet's mouth did something that might have once been a smile. Motion to approve Harrison's requests, she said. Hands went up, a forest, then a stand of trees, then enough. Motion carries, she said. Draft the note to employees, Clara. Clara nodded, eyes glassing for the first time in 24 hours. She sent the email with a small decisive click. Across the building, phones chimed. Across a city, rumors hardened into facts. In pediatrics, Sophie slept. Jasmine sat beside the bassinet with the wrap pulled in her lap like a shoreline, watching the tiny pulse at the base of Sophie's throat. Dorothy dozed in a chair with a magazine tented on her stomach, the crossword 4 squares from complete. Dr. Patel stepped in, checked the monitors, lowered the sound. She's holding steady, she murmured. Jasmine nodded. Michael? With the board, Patel said. He'll be back before you can count to 1,000, which, knowing you, you've already done. Jasmine cracked a smile. Only to 800. Overachiever, Patel said. Then softer. You did well. Jasmine's eyes stayed on the baby. Diana did well, she said. She left us the map, and you followed it, Patel said. Maps don't walk themselves. Jasmine looked up then, face unarmored. There was a moment on the roof, she said. I wasn't there, but I could feel it. One breath either way. Patel nodded. That's how much most lives turn on. They sat with that for a while, the hum of air and light making a kind of peace. The world outside kept running. Press releases, filings, charges, a stock graph sketching jagged letters. But in here, time padded its steps, footsteps in the hall. Michael appeared in the doorway, soaked and clear-eyed. Jasmine stood, Dorothy woke with a snort and then a "oh my stars," and then her hands to her chest. "How'd it go?" Jasmine asked. Michael let out a long breath and wiped rain from his brow with the back of his hand, like a man who'd finally put something down. "They voted," he said. "They're cooperating. Richard's out. The FDA is in. We'll take our licks in public and do the work in private." Dorothy's face softened into a proud smile. "Your father would have been stubborn," she said. "Your mother would have been kind. You found both." For a long moment, Michael didn't answer. He walked to the bassinet and looked down at Sophie's face, the half-smile babies wear in sleep when their bodies remember water. He put his hand where Jasmine had taught him, firm under the ribs, steady pressure, and felt her breath meet his. "Diana left me homework," he said, eyes on his daughter. "I'm late turning it in, but I'm turning it in." When he looked up, Jasmine was wiping at one eye again. He reached, hesitated, then rested his free hand over hers on the rail. "Thank you," he said. The words were simple and too small and exactly right. "Don't thank me yet," she said, voice catching and firm at once. "We have an entire city to retrain on infant care. Hospitals, daycares, homes. If Juniper did one thing, it was show us how fast a bad idea can move. We have to make the good move faster." Michael nodded slowly. "Then let's move." 6 months later, Los Angeles woke to sun that had forgiven the winter. The Harrison Pediatric Safety and Ethics Unit, an ungainly mouthful that everyone shortened to HPSAU, published its first report, a blueprint for infant device oversight that turned regulators' eyes toward living rooms, not just labs. The Juniper case had become a cautionary tale taught in MBA ethics and nursing programs alike. Miguel, the man with the burn scar, pled to a stack of charges in exchange for cooperation. Richard was indicted for tampering, witness intimidation, and a shopping list of white-collar charges that finally made headlines for the right reasons. Meridian's breakthrough quieted under the weight of a federal inquiry and 1,000 angry parents. Harrison Care's stock cratered, then steadied, then climbed, not to its old heights, but to a place that didn't make anyone flinch to look at. The board got used to hearing no from the ethics unit. Investors learned a new math: reputation plus rigor shrinks revenue. In a corner of Cedars Sinai that used to be a storage bay, a small wing opened with steady, stubborn fanfare. A plaque near the door read, "The Diana Harrison Sensory and Safety Center." The ribbon was cut not by a mayor or a mogul, but by a nurse in plain scrubs whose hands could settle a storm in a 6-month-old's chest, and by a woman who had once packed lunches and cleaned floors and watched a family learn to breathe again. On the second floor, a training room filled with parents sat rapt while Jasmine Walker, program director, not Miss Walker, demonstrated the rap that had once been contraband in a kitchen. She showed firm pressure points, then gentler ones. She explained vestibular input with a borrowed swing. She taught the math of decibels like it was a bedtime story. On a whiteboard she wrote, "When the world is too loud, make a smaller world." She wrote, "Trust is a vital sign." She wrote, "Brown noise." 44 dB, in the back row, Dorothy dabbed her eyes and pretended it was allergies. Dr. Patel heckled from the aisle with corrections that were really... Applause. Dr. Anderson stood in the doorway and took a picture he would send to the foundation's donors, with a note that said, "Look, this is what money is for." Michael watched from the glass a little apart. He had a company to run and regulators to charm, and the odd shareholder to endure, but for once those felt like roads going the right direction. He carried Sophie on his hip, no carrier today. She was 2 steps from walking and insisted on the view, and she patted the glass rhythmically, saying something only she understood. "Do you remember?" He whispered into her hair. "The rain? The roof?" She did not. Thank God she did not. All she would know of rain, if he did his job, was gutters and mud, and the sound a roof makes when it loves you enough to hold. Sophie twisted, determined, and Michael set her down. She took 3 wobbling steps toward the door, then 5, then laughing 6. When Jasmine opened the door, Sophie flung herself at her with the unstoppable velocity of a small planet finding its sun. "They don't always choose their fathers," Dorothy had told him once, careful and kind. "But if you stand where the light is, they'll learn your name for it." He was trying. He would keep trying. He had learned that legacies weren't built in boardrooms. They were built in hallways where a child decided who she ran to first. After the training, Jasmine found him by the window. The city lay out like a map. She had walked barefoot. "You missed my best joke," she said. "I heard it," he said. "About hospital coffee." "Low-hanging fruit," she said, mock solemn. "For my next trick, I'll convince a billionaire to fund a community clinic in Echo Park." "Done," he said, and meant it. She raised a brow. "You didn't even ask for a deck." "I've seen your deck," he said. "She's 4 syllables long and answers to Sophie. They were quiet a beat, then 2. Bandages of old months flapped in the breeze and lay still. I keep expecting her to remember," he said softly. "The paint on the wall, everything." "She remembers what we repeat," Jasmine said. "We repeat safety. We repeat people showing up. We repeat hands where the breath is." He looked at her. Add the space between them that had been employer, employee, then adversary, ally, then something with no right word, because the right words were always smaller than a life. "Do you ever get tired?" he asked, as if it were the first time it had occurred to him that a person could. "Every day," she said, "but now I get to be tired for the right reasons." They stood together, looking out over a city that had tried to swallow them and ended up feeding them instead. Michael slid his hand into his pocket and felt the tiny battered micro SD case he'd had encased in glass. He had set it on his desk beside a photo. Diana laughing into sunlight, a smear of paint on her cheek. The wrap folded over one arm. Some days he could watch the videos. Some days he could not. All days he could hear the last line that had made it through the rain. "He's already inside." He thought about that line now and understood it in a way he hadn't on the night of the storm. "He's already inside" was a warning about an enemy. It was also a promise about a love. If you let the right people in, if you let an infant fall asleep against your ribs and a nurse teach your hands how to be useful, then the world could batter the windows and you would not be moved. Sophie shrieked the special shriek of someone who has just discovered the slinky magic of stairs. Jasmine scooped her up before she could test gravity. "Not today, astronaut," she said, kissing a forehead that smelled like soap and snacks. Michael held the door. The small procession moved into a hall lined with drawings, crayon hearts, shaky rainbows. A rocket ship that looked suspiciously like a bottle warmer turned upright. Above the exit, a simple sign in sans serif. Keep going, they did that night. After paperwork and bedtime, and the kind of silence that feels like a shelter, Michael sat in the nursery with the wrap across his lap. He wasn't using it. Sophie no longer needed it at every hour, but he kept it there. A reminder of the invisible physics that hold people together. He traced the seam where the card had been hidden and thought of a girl in a hospital video whispering trust into the future. He thought of a woman whose courage had turned a kitchen into a courtroom. He thought of a housekeeper who had been the spine of a house, a doctor whose swears were prayers, an officer whose jokes were armor, an assistant who could spin 10 plates without breaking a single one. He put his hand where it belonged, firm under the ribs of a sleeping child, and let the beat under his palm teach him again how to live. Somewhere a storm began over the ocean, far from this roof. Somewhere a boardroom argument blew itself out. Somewhere a prototype was boxed and taken to a warehouse that no longer had a door for men like Richard to walk through. Here, in a room painted a soft, stubborn blue, a father sat in the dark and did nothing spectacular. He did the only thing that had ever changed anything. He stayed.